At T-Mobile, when we see our country's military, we don't just see uniforms. We see the people behind them. We're proud to support military families by offering them half-off family lines. And we're committed to hiring 10,000 veterans and military spouses to be part of our workforce in the next 5 years. Because no matter where or when you serve, T-Mobile stands ready to serve you. Visit a T-Mobile store today.
Submit military info within 45 days or plan becomes T-Mobile One at up to $20 more per line. Half off additional line price for lines 2 through 6 versus T-Mobile One with autopay.
Blog Talk Radio.
We everyone. We are welcoming you to Call to Serve, our April 22nd show. We have a very special guest for you today, and I am excited about it. As you probably could tell just a little bit, I don't usually get too excited, but I'm excited. And we are really happy to have our special guest here with us today. And I'm going to open his mic and let him introduce himself to you in any which way he chooses to go, because he has so many things to tell us and different ways to go. So I'm going to just let him do his THING. Good afternoon, sir. The mic is yours. Please say hello and tell everybody who you are and what you are and how you are and whatever it is you want to tell us. Thank you.
Well, hello. Thank you, Mrs. Daisy Brown. And I'd like to thank the Tribe Family Channel and Beverly Black for inviting me to the program. My name is Bernard Nathaniel Lee Jr., and the junior is important because my father was Bernard Nathaniel Lee Sr., and he was in the military. I am the son of a career veteran of the U.S. Army, and together with my brother and my sisters, we traveled throughout the United States and Europe with my dad, who was in the Army. I recently chronicled those travels in a family memoir series entitled A Look Back in Time, Memoir of a Military Kid in the 50s. I'm on the third volume of that series.
Our guest line has dropped, so we're going to go to a commercial and reconnect him. One moment, please.
Ever wanted to get away from it all? Maybe an inexpensive honeymoon, or even a second honeymoon, or just a mini vacation for the two of you? Now you can. You can go to the Shawlights home, away from home, when they're not on tour. It's called the Shawlights Dream Castle Villa, where you can relax in luxurious surroundings, where the staff and all amenities are at your full disposal. Their private gated villa offers 24-hour on-property security. Dream Castle Villa is just 20 minutes away from the newly constructed International Airport in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Enjoy incredible views of the Caribbean Sea and the Iron Shore Golf Course. The Shawlights Dream Castle Villa is a relaxing, soothing, and romantic experience that's excellent for small private weddings, wedding renewals, engagements, anniversaries, or just a mini vacation for two. For reservations, visit their website at dreamcastlevilla.com or call toll-free at 888-747-9802 and see what other luxuries await you. Relax, just like the Shawlights at the Shawlights Dream Castle Villa, and hold on to your dreams.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned in to Call to Serve, co-hosted by Daisy Brown and Phil Helinsky. We are hoping that Phil is okay in his absence, and we are now reconnecting you with Daisy Brown and her guest, Mr. Bernard N. Lee.
Thank
you.
Hello
again. I was sharing with you the title of the memoir series that I've written for my family, who moved around 21 years as a military kid when my dad was in the Army. It's a look back in time, memoir of a military kid in the 50s. I traveled with my dad to Georgia, to Texas, to Oklahoma, to Kansas, to Virginia, to Maryland, and to Germany. I chronicled all of those travels, the people I met, the various activities and adventures that our family had, and the things that I learned. And I put that in the memoir series, A Look Back in Time. I attended Cameron Junior College in Oklahoma. That was after graduating from Lawton High School in Oklahoma, when my dad was on his second tour there. I joined Army ROTC while I was at Cameron, and I also joined the drill team. Our drill team went to the Junior Rose Bowl game in Pasadena, California, with our football team, who played a team from Long Beach Poly. It was a great trip, and I recall it very vividly, and that's one of the things that I'm choosing to write about in book 3 of my series. I attended Howard University in Washington, D.C. after graduating from Cameron Junior College with a pre-engineering degree. While in Washington, D.C. at Howard University, I was selected from the Army ROTC group to take pilot's training and become a private pilot. I have a philosophy that says when someone gives you a chance to experience something new, you always say yes. So when they asked for volunteers, I was one of the first people to step forward. If you've never flown in an airplane by yourself, it's quite an experience. I had about 12 hours of flying time under my belt with an instructor. That's at 1 hour per week. And I thought I was ready to solo. That's when you go up by yourself. My instructor said, any day now, you'll be ready. I trusted his judgment, so I didn't push it. I came in for my regular Thursday flight lesson and found that my instructor was not there. There was another gentleman who said, go check your plane out. You'll be okay. Let me know if everything's all right, and then taxi up. So I did. I checked the plane. I got in. I revved up the engine, and I taxied over to where this gentleman and another fellow were talking. I asked him if my flight instructor was going to be there today, and he said, I don't see him yet. But look, if you think you're ready, why don't you go on up, and when you get back, you should be here. I realized that what he was saying was, if it's okay with you, you can go on your solo. You can go up by yourself. I was elated. I took off down the runway, got to my final turn, revved the engine, and went down the runway, raised up slightly, and up into the air. At that point, all of the training I'd had kicked in. Everything that I had remembered from 14 weeks of flying kicked in. I was up in the air by myself. I went up as high as I normally would go in the pattern, banked at a 45-degree angle, and went out of the flight pattern, back into the down leg so that I could land the plane. I came down, landed gently, and taxied back over to where, to my surprise, my flight instructor and the gentleman who told me I could go up on my own were standing there talking to each other. When I pulled up beside them, my flight instructor gave a thumbs up and said, why don't you go around again? That was my introduction to becoming a private pilot in the ROTC at Howard University. After graduating from Howard in 1969 with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, I joined the family of Bell Telephone System Companies. I had an offer to become a pit boss in a steel mill in Pittsburgh, but I turned that offer down. And I joined the telephone company, and I worked at Western Electric, AT&T Long Lines, and AT&T headquarters in Bedminster and in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. I finished my career at Lucent Technologies. That's the research arm of the telephone company before it was broken up into parts. and I retired in 2003. I then decided to work on my bucket list. I had always wanted to teach, and I'd gotten a chance to do some of that while I was in New Jersey. And so I went back to school, got a Master of Arts of Education, and taught high school classes to guys in vocational and technical high school and gals in vocational and technical high school in Somerset County, New Jersey. I had a technique I used for my class to keep the guys activated, interested, and engaged. I let each team, a team of 4, pick a car that they liked from a magazine. I posted a back on it, and I stuck it up on the board. After I had the cars all lined up, I drew a line for the start, and then I posted along the board all of the points that you would get as you went from one accomplishment to the next. I used that technique to ask questions of the class that I expected them to have studied during the week, and as they answered a correct answer, their car moved. If they answered a bonus question, their car moved further. I was so surprised when the principal came in at the end of the week. I think my class was a little bit rowdy. The competition was stiff. We were talking science. I was asking questions about the Nobel Prize winners. These guys were so engaged that you would have thought we had a prize fight going on in the class. The principal stood there, opened the door, came in, closed the door, and kind of leaned back against the wall to see what was going on. When he realized that I had these young men, who much of the time would be just interested in working on their own cars, answering science questions, fighting with each other about who got it right and who didn't, he was amazed. I used that technique the whole time I was there. That technique worked great. I could relate to the people who were studying science because I knew what they liked. They liked cars. They like working with their hands. They like putting things together and taking things apart. I really enjoyed the 4 years that I taught there at Somerset Vocational. I'll take a break and see if there are any questions and if there's anything that you'd like to know about my early years as a student.
Well, my one question is, you told us about the many places that you traveled, but you never told us where you started. where was home? You know, you said you
That's a beautiful question. I'm a military brat. That's an endearing term for children who grow up in the military. You will know, if you've met many of us, that we don't really have a home. We have all the places we've lived and a place we were born. I was born in Washington, D.C., in Garfield Memorial Hospital. I left Washington, D.C. when I was about a year old, and we moved to Virginia. My mom and my grandparents lived on a farm in Virginia while my dad was in the service. He had entered the service in the Marines at 16 years old. He lied about his age because he really, really wanted to get started. You see, when he was 5 years old, he had lost his mom and his dad.
Oh.
In fact, he was raised by his older sister. And so as soon as he could find a way to earn his own way, he decided to go out on his own. Well, my mother and I and my sister lived on the farm in Big Island, Virginia. Big Island and the farm we lived on is right above the mighty, mighty James River, the same river that rolls down to original colony in Jamestown. We had a great time on the farm. My grandmother was still alive, and there were lots of chores we had to do. I recall my grandmother telling me stories about the time during the Great Depression. That was in the 30s when people didn't have jobs, and so they went from town to town looking for work. She would tell us about the time that they would walk across the street, walk down the hill to the railroad track, and they'd wait for the train. They would take an apple, oranges, maybe a pear, something that they could throw up to the hobos who were on the train as they rode by. And in turn, the hobos would kick a few pieces of coal off the coal car, which then they would collect in a bucket and take back to the house to fire the stove.
Oh, my.
Yes, my grandparents were very lucky in that they lived on a farm. They could grow their own vegetables. They could raise their own. However, the Depression got to be so dire that my mom tells me about the time that she had to work. She would do day work for some of the people who lived in the county, and in turn, they would give her a choice. The choice would be $5 for the day, or she could choose to take a pound of butter. My mom remembers vividly always taking the butter. She had to take the butter because the family had sold the one cow that they had, which they get the milk from and the butter. They had sold the cow the year before to kind of keep things going during the winter. So they were resourceful, and they lived a good life on the farm, and that's what I remember about my grandparents.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. I just can't imagine. You know, you talk about bartering. That was a show enough barter to do butter for. I mean, what is it? Apples and oranges for coal. You know, I can't even imagine that. And we complain about not having designer this and designer that this day and time. You know, I can't say most of us, but a lot of the younger generations have no clue what our grandparents and great-grandparents went through just to survive, you know, just to keep the family together. And they look at it like it's no big deal, but it's something, and family is so important and so special. It's something that, you know, you can find your friends, but you cannot select your family. You're born into that family, and that unity or that unit should be as solid as you possibly can make it, you know. And it sounds like your family did a good job at doing that. You know, it's wonderful.
Well, you're right about family, and it was their creativity that got them through that time. My grandfather slaughtered hogs for the people who still were fortunate enough to have them. And in return, as you might know, you would get all the parts of the hog that the person you slaughtered and smoked the hog in a smokehouse for did not want. And that's one of the ways that pig feet and some of the other parts of the pig that people came to treasure, that's one way they came to treasure those parts as a protein that they could eat, because those were the parts that you got when you slaughtered hogs.
Mhm.
My grandfather was also a little industrious. He knew the sheriff in the county. And as you probably had heard tales in those days, there was some restrictions on alcohol. The production of it, there was tax on it, pretty heavy tax. And my grandfather had a lot of land, and it was mountainous land. And he was the keeper of the gate at the beginning of the road going up the mountain. And it was his job to make a phone call and let the sheriff and other important people in town know if the person who they called the revenuer, the government revenuer person, was coming up the mountain, because they had their own still and distilled their own liquor on the backside of the mountain. So my grandfather was called, they called him Biddy. His name was William, but they called him Biddy. He didn't take any stuff from anybody, and he backed it up usually with his shotgun, which he carried around with him. And he was known for some of the best alcohol in the county.
Wow. Yeah, they did know how to put it together, I'll tell you. Oh boy, that's interesting. Yeah, they knew how to do it, you know. I was watching a movie the other day, and this particular movie was where she was manufacturing beer out of kale, and it was called Kale Beer, and made all kinds of money to the point that became she became rich behind this kale beer. And but I'm finding that pretty much a lot of the vegetables can be used for alcohol. Bev, you know what to do with them, how to ferment it and so forth. But it was just interesting that she chose this kale to make the beer out of.
That is interesting. That's very interesting. In the first book, in A Look Back in Time, memoir of a military kid in the 50s, I talk about the time that my family spent in Augusta, Georgia. We came to Augusta when I was in the 5th grade. My sister was in the 4th grade. My father was stationed at Fort Benning and Fort Gordon, Georgia. We lived at that time on post. And I recall when we got to the post, we lived in barrack-like housing. There were 4 units, stairs, 2 downstairs. When we got to our barracks, a young man came running out toward me, and I just stood there kind of in surprise to see someone so eager to see me. I don't know it was me that he was looking for. It was just anybody new to fill up the other unit that was empty in his building. He ran and gave me this big hug, and he told me his name. I told him my name, and we were pretty good buddies right after that. Well, a few weeks later, my sister had met some girls there, and I had met some other fellas. We played marbles. That was one of the games we really liked to play then. And it was time to go to school. And I recall getting up all excited, my mom and dad telling us that we should mind our manners at school. We should remember that we're a military family, and that anything we do and any trouble we get into will reflect badly on our father and his job. Every military kid gets that message from their military parent. In fact, if you do too poorly at school and you are too much trouble at school, your father's commanding officer usually gets a call, especially from a school on post. And that's not good when your father has to go see his boss's boss about his child.
I'm sure.
Well, anyway, this day, my sister and I ran to the bus stop where all the other kids were gathered. I was almost there and waving at one of the kids that I had met when my sister said, "We're not supposed to be here." I didn't understand why she said that or what she meant. But right after she did, another kid looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" Well, I was a little bit surprised. I said, "We're here to catch the bus to go to school." He said, "Not your bus." I said, "What?" He said, "Your bus is at that other corner." And he pointed to a bus that was just leaving. I grabbed my sister's hand, and we ran toward the bus. And a kid in the back window noticed us and got the bus driver to stop, and we climbed on board. I didn't realize that for African Americans at that time, this was 1955 in Augusta, Georgia, we went to different schools even though we lived at the same place on post. We drove off the post, we drove through town, we drove out to a large area of cornfields and cotton fields. It was dusty and very remote, and I don't recall having ever been there before. And then we came to this big clearing. And there in the clearing was this huge, bright, beautiful school, the most beautiful school I had ever seen. Well, we spent the day there. We got back on the bus, and we came back to the post. Our bus stopped on one corner. The other kid's bus stopped on the other corner. We all got off our buses, and we ran toward each other, locked arms, and walked back to our barracks. There were 4 families in our barracks. The family on the first floor in the first unit was Irish. The family in the second unit above them was Italian. The family below me was from the Philippines, and our family was in the 4th unit. We were all one happy family on the military post. There had not been desegregation of the schools in Georgia in 1955. And so we went to separate schools all the time we were there.
Interesting.
We went, it is. We went from Georgia to Texas. I was in the 6th grade. I recall at that time we had what was called a B-1 bomber. It was a huge airplane. It made the loudest noise you've ever heard, and the vibration from the engines was enough to shake the furniture and bottles and anything that you might have on the shelves in a house when it flew over. We were told that in case there was an alarm that said we were being under attack by an enemy that might be sending bombs into our area, and these were nuclear bombs, we were told to leave our desk, leave our chairs, and climb under our desk, put our hands between our legs, and be as quiet as we could. I guess, as you know today, that won't help you very much if you're subject to a nuclear attack, but that was the information we were given at that time.
Yeah, they didn't give us very, it was, well, things have changed so much, and even the weaponry has changed a lot. So what we're dealing with now, it's very little that will really save us no matter what we do. if they really do it and do it right, we can just do like the Manhattan, say kiss and say goodbye because it's over. But it's war is so it's devastating to even think about the possibility of that happening, But at the same time, when we look at all the disarray and disruption and everything that we're going through right now, you just don't know what to think from day to day. And the only thing that I say is I try to just stay prayed up and just try to make sure that I'm wrapped in the arms of God, because if we give up on Him, it's over. That is our saving grace is to have faith and to believe in God, because if we don't, this world is going to be doomed, and it's nothing that can be done about it.
Well, I think you're right in terms of the belief in God. That's kept me grounded, and it's kept most of the people I know in my family grounded. I also believe that the lessons I learned by being a military kid, they were interesting lessons. I went from Texas to Oklahoma. I went to school at Douglas Elementary School in Oklahoma. This was in Lawton, Oklahoma, where there's the artillery base there, Lawton Fort Sill. I noticed at Douglas that once again, we were at a school that was not integrated. And that was a slight surprise to me because we went to school on the base in Texas and the school was integrated. But so the schools on the military post had been desegregated from the order that was given by the president. And so they weren't desegregated in every state, but at Fort Bliss, Texas, when we went to school on post, we went to an integrated elementary school. So we came to Oklahoma, and we were back in a local school. We didn't live on post. My dad had not been promoted yet, and he needed to be a certain rank before he could get on post housing. So we lived in town. I noted at that time the differences in the school. I noticed that we didn't have a large place to play. There wasn't a football field. There weren't basketball courts. There wasn't even a good place to run and kick a ball. And I wondered whether that was by design or whether I had just gotten there before they put all those facilities together. That was the difference that I noticed between the school I had attended on post and the school that I went to when I got to Oklahoma in town.
Trust me, it was by design. It was by design, and because it took, back in that time, because I know that's during my era too, and we there was definitely a difference, depending on where you went, and you were treated differently over here than you were over there. And like I said, it was prayer and family unity that kept us together, because some of us have experienced some things that really could drive you into a hatred pattern, and not a willingness to become inhumane. I see people who have been challenged with a lot of obstacles, depending on their lifestyle and how they were raised and what they had to deal with in coming up through the years. And it's just a blessing when you can make it and realize that you made it and realize how you made it, And like I said, it's wonderful when you know who you are and whose you are.
That's true. That's very, very true. By being in the military, I got to see both sides of the picture. I realized that the facilities weren't there, and I realized that wasn't equal, and that was part of that decision, Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. But I was also a part of something that was very historical in Lawton, Oklahoma. In 1957, when I went to the 7th grade, the military had an arrangement with the town to desegregate the schools in town. Central Junior High, 7th and 8th grade, was desegregated in 1957 when I attended. And I recall going to that school, and for many of the students who went, most of them were from the post. We rode a bus from the post daily into town to go to Central Junior High School. But I remember getting to the school and coming in early in the morning and going into the cafeteria to wait for the first bell. And I noticed there were a couple of tables of African-American students, and they would congregate together at those couple of tables, and they'd talk and share their experiences from their weekend and, plan trips to the movies and things that they were going to do during the week. And I did that for a few days. Then I realized that there were some guys in my math class, and they were sitting at a table, which I came to know as the math table. And in the morning, they would get together and talk about the homework. And if you had an answer to a problem, you could share it. And everybody there at the table could have that answer before they had to go to class. So I chose to break the mold. I left outside of my comfort zone, and I walked over to the math table, and I sat down. I got a rather cool welcome from some of the other fellows at the table, but nobody said anything initially. And so we start talking about the problems. We're up to problem number 21. I think there were 30 in that assignment. Nobody had the answer to 21. So I said, I've got the answer to 21. The kid next to me looked at me and said, I wouldn't take your answer ever. Then he looked at the other kids at the table and said, I wouldn't take an answer from him. He doesn't know what the blankety blank he's talking about. Well, I could have gotten mad. I could have been upset, but I wasn't. I said calmly, look, I worked the problem over twice. I think the answer is correct, but you don't have to take my word for it, and you don't have to take my answer. I just offered it. Well, we got to class, and the next day, they handed the papers back. The kid who had spoken up sat behind me in class. I got my paper and looked at it. I had 100. I put it down on my desk. I looked at his paper. He had 100. I passed it back.
Oh, my.
I realized something. I realized something that day. A person doesn't have to like you to take your answer. It was a very important lesson for me because what it told me was that not everyone will give you credit for your knowledge or intelligence. But don't discount yourself, especially if you know you have what it takes. And definitely be careful who you share your knowledge with, because some people won't give you credit, but they will take your answer.
Amen. Now, while on that note, I would like to pause for the cause and go to give our sponsor a chance to say hello to us, meaning commercial time.
Ever wanted to get away from it all? Maybe an inexpensive honeymoon, or even a second honeymoon, or just a mini vacation for the two of you? Now you can. You can go to the Shawlights home, away from home, when they're not on tour. It's called the Shawlights Dream Castle Villa, where you can relax in luxurious surroundings, where the staff and all amenities are at your full disposal. Their private gated villa offers 24-hour on-property security. Dream Castle Villa is just 20 minutes away from the newly constructed International Airport in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Enjoy incredible views of the Caribbean Sea and the Iron Shore Golf Course. The Shawlights Dream Castle Villa is a relaxing, soothing, and romantic experience that's excellent for small private weddings, wedding renewals, engagements, anniversaries, or just a mini vacation for two. For reservations, visit their website at dreamcastledevilla.com or call toll-free at 888-747-9802 and see what other luxuries await you. Relax, just like the Shawlights at the Shawlights Dream Castle Villa, and hold on to your dreams.
Once again, you're listening to Call to Serve, a Tribe Family channel, Gumbo for the Soul international brand, and our special guest today is Mr. Bernard Richards. We're going to continue, sir, with this interesting history, because that's exactly what it is. And it's just amazing to see. More people should take time to share what their experiences of life, their accomplishments, how they got from point A to point Z. And it's just good that you've taken the time to put this down on paper. Penning is so important, and so few of us do that. And as a matter of fact, I'm anxious to read your books. So make sure you give us the information how to get a hold of you, how to reach out and grab them, and let us know of any upcoming projects you're working on, as well as completion of Volume 3.
Yes, well, you can get Volume 1 and 2 on my website, BernardLeeJr.com, BernardLeeJr.com. So you can get Volume 1 and Volume 2 on my website. You can call me on the telephone. There's a number on the site. And my email address is Lee, L-E-E, B as in Bravo, N as in November, 2001 at AOL.com. And you can also find me on Facebook and Twitter. And if you Google me, Bernard, N as in November, Lee, L-E-E-J-R. Be sure to put the J-R on there. There are a lot of Lees. I have a story.
Before you do that, please forgive me for pronouncing your name wrong. I have a friend, Bernard Richards, and for some strange reason, I just said Bernard Richards. So please forgive me for that.
That's okay. I have a story to tell you about how you learn, and I'd like to share it. When I was at Douglas Elementary School, I had a teacher named Albert Johnson. Now, I've heard it said that there aren't many male teachers in our schools, not nearly enough for all the boys that there are to look up to. But this gentleman was very instrumental in my life, and he gave me a skill that I might not have gotten anywhere else, and I used it to my advantage later. Albert Johnson was a teacher at the time. He taught the 6th grade and 7th grade, and he taught us to set a proper table. taught us where the silverware should go, where the water glass should go, where the plates and all of the rest of the accoutrements on the table should be placed. It was that information that I received and the special dinner that we did for all the faculty once we had learned to set up a table and once we had learned to serve. It was that information I used to get my job at the Officers Club on post, first as a busboy and then as a waiter. I worked on post as a busboy and waiter all the way through high school and through 2 years of junior college. And I owe the success I had in my interview for that job by knowing how to set a table, because that's what I was asked to do to get the job. So I found going to this school, even though some of the facilities might not have been as glamorous or as adequate as some of the other schools I had attended, there were teachers there who cared about us and who cared about us not only learning the ABCs, English, science, math, music, art, but they cared about us learning fundamental things that we could use in our lives to show that we were educated. And I really appreciated that.
I am really I'm very happy to have had you with us this evening. If you have, we do have a few more moments that we can continue talking. If you have other thoughts that you want to present, the main thing that I want to say, though, is I'm missing my co-host, Phil Helinski. He apparently is ill today, and I've not been able to reach him, and I'm praying that everything is well with him. So I'm going to ask all prayer warriors to pray that all is well with my co-host, Philip Helinski. I do want to thank our creator and executive producer, Mrs. Beverly Black, who has been an inspiration to me and has allowed us to air this show on a monthly basis, and I'm just truly grateful to her. And I've been so blessed and so fortunate to have such wonderful guests month after month, and it just makes it so easy to do this because I was kind of leery, and I just want to thank everyone who has taken time to listen to us, who've joined us repeatedly, and to have our guests come on so graciously and so eagerly to share their stories with us. And I just feel so honored and so blessed. And I just wanted to take a moment to say that and to say thank you all. Or should I say, as they say in the Christmas story, thank you one and all.
That's very good. That's very good. I think by sharing
I just wanted
you.
to come in. I'm sorry, Bernard. This is Beverly. I'm the creator, and I just wanted to come in, if I may interrupt, and thank Daisy for the opportunity and the honor of presenting this platform. This could not be done without you. It was created and waited for you. And I also want to wish you a very happy birthday next Sunday. You know, you are my heart, and you're my queen.
Thank you.
All right.
So
have a
much.
blessed
Love
one.
You.
Thank you. Love you too. Love you.
Happy birthday, Daisy.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. I've got an affair next Sunday, so it won't be too much I can do except that. But I'm just grateful to see another year coming. I'm going to miss celebrating with my dear friend Cuba Gooding Sr., who we lost last year on the 20th of April, and his birthday is always 2 days before mine. So for the last maybe 15 years, we always celebrated together, and I'm going to miss him. But it's all right. It's all right. I know he's in God's heavenly kingdom, and he's fine. So I just want to say thank you so much for the birthday wish.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. When we left the United States to go to Europe, I was going to the 8th grade in school, and we had to go across country. We took a trip across country at a time when you couldn't stop at a hotel or a motel anywhere unless you knew the people and unless you knew they would let you stay. So most of the time what we did was drive during the day, and you would relieve yourself out in the dark at night, and you would sleep in the car. We were sleeping in our car in Tennessee up in the mountains one night in our trip to the East Coast to fly out to go to Europe. And we woke up in the morning, my sister got out to stretch and realized that she was within 1.5 feet of going over the cliff.
Oh, my.
We had parked at night, and so we didn't know how close we were to the edge. And some of the roads didn't have railings to protect you. I also realized that my dad was missing. I asked my mom, so where's Dad? She said he'd gone into town. And I asked her why, and she said he's gone into town to get us something to eat. I didn't realize at the time, but my dad didn't know anyone in town. He didn't know much about the town, and he was a little leery of taking his family into town and being refused accommodations. And so he had left to walk in by himself, find someone he could talk with, find his way around to get us something to eat. This was 7 o'clock in the morning. At about 9:30, 9:45, he had not returned.
Oh, my.
At about 10:30, he had not returned, and the cars and trucks were starting to pass us. Every once in a while, one would slow down. We were a little bit concerned about that, but we were glad they kept going. We didn't know anybody in that part of the world either. Well, about 11 o'clock, we looked down the hill, and we saw a figure walking up with the cars passing by. And as he got closer, we realized it was our dad. He had a package in either hand as he walked up the hill. We were never so happy to see him. That was our trip across country in 1958 in Tennessee.
Wow.
We went to Virginia, where my aunt lived, and we went from Virginia to Washington, D.C., where another aunt lived, and then we went from Washington, D.C. to New York and flew out of what is now LaGuardia Airport into Germany. And it was a wonderful experience, which I cover in book 2 of my memoir series, A Look Back in Time, memoir of a military kid in the 50s.
Wow, that's really interesting. I know I was in the service in the 70s, and back then they were not very kind to black women, and it was a trip, you know. You had to have thick skin to deal with a lot of the things that were thrown at you, but so I can imagine, you know, some of the things that you had to deal with, and you know, those are the things that help to make us strong too.
Yes, they are.
Mhm.
They set a foundation. The structure that we got in the military, and I was asked this question on an earlier show. They asked me, why would you recommend that a young person go into the military, considering at that time how people weren't treated always as fairly as they should be? And the response I had was, the military was a relatively safe place to go. We had a housing allowance. We had a food and clothing allowance. We had reduced prices at the PX and the commissary on post. We had an environment which on post, you were measured by your rank. Everyone was expected to be treated the same. And that was enforced, and that was reinforced. And so you felt safe in that environment. Now, if you went off post, you had to be careful, had to watch your manners, you had to know where you were, you had to have some friends to watch your back. But you could count on your military friends to do that. We were a close, tight-knit group, not always agreeing, but we believed that we formed a core of people with a dedication to service, and that the benefit we got from that core was enough at the time for a person to be willing to serve.
True. That's very true. And the discipline that you is definitely a teacher of discipline. You walk away, you learn that if you don't learn anything else.
Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you definitely do.
You can go in there thuggish if you want to.
They used to say it'll make a man out of you, and that was for a reason. If you get to see some of the rest of the world, then you realize that it's not all the same. When we got to Germany, we realized that people were curious because they hadn't seen people of color. Most of them hadn't ever talked to someone from the United States. But we also realized that a lot of the codes that were enforced in the U.S. at the time were not enforced in Europe and not enforced in Germany. And so the GIs who were there came to respect the new environment that they were in. And I think for that reason were somewhat disappointed when they came back home and found that some of those discriminatory codes were still in effect. Yes,
that's true. That's true. I agree with that. So, well, we're going to have to wind up, and I'm just so grateful to have had you with us today. And if you would just give us one more time your contact information, I would greatly appreciate it. And I will certainly be reaching out to you in the future. And maybe you'll come back when Volume 3 is completed.
I would love to.
Okay. Well, then we've got a date. So get busy and start writing, or should I say continue writing.
Yes. You can reach me online at bernardleejr.com. BernardLeejr.com. You can get a copy of A Look Back in Time, memoir of a military kid in the 50s, on my website. You can also get a copy at a number of bookstores in Atlanta and at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The name of the book, A Look Back in Time, the name of the author, Bernard N. as in November, Lee, Jr. And I have really enjoyed being on your program, Daisy.
I thank you so much for being here with us, and our next show will be May, fourth Sunday in May. May 27th. May 27th, everyone. And we're going to have special guests. Hopefully, we'll have some guests from the Retired Enlisted Association, or should I say the Enlisted Association, and also the American Legion. So that will be our guest for May. And I'm looking very forward to that. And thank you so much for just spending time with us and sharing with us. Thank you, Beverly, for being there with us and for us. We appreciate you, love you much. And we can close out and call it a night. And I'm just truly, truly grateful. And I'm getting ready to celebrate my birthday.
Have a great time.
Thank you.
Yes, this is America. My home, sweet home. God bless America. God bless America. It's the land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountain to the prairie, to the ocean, wide with love. God please bless America, for it's my home, sweet home. Now everybody sing. Please bless America. Oh, it's the land that I love. Oh, Lord. Please guide her and guide her through the night with the light from above. Oh, from the mountain to the prairie, to the ocean, wide with love. God please bless America, for it's my home, sweet home. God please, it's my home, sweet, my home, America, my home,
You teared up because the barista screwed up your order. You finished a pint of fudge ripple ice cream in front of the freezer. You yelled at your desk neighbor, Leslie, for breathing too loud. This time, don't go and buy another box of tampons. Question what you thought you knew about periods. Question what you buy. what you use, what the usual way, right way is to deal with it. Revolutionize. Switch it up. Try the Diva Cup and see how it can make dealing with your period a whole lot better.